Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fella Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm showing you a very fun VR. It's called Mid-Year Tarot Tag, and it's a VR to Chanel from Spirited Stardust 11. And because I'm actually still traveling and I'm actually filming from Sukhothai, which is in the northern part of Thailand, and I don't obviously have access to all of my decks. I only have access to decks that I brought with me or decks that I've acquired recently. This deck is going to be really special to me because it's going to be including almost 100% of the decks that I recently bought. Obviously there's going to be a couple of exceptions, but let's have a look. Let's start. Okay, so the first prompt for this fun VR is favorite deck you used so far in 2023. I didn't even have to cheat in this case because this deck, if you recognize it from the backs, it's the Rainbow Moon Tarot and it's by Sam Rock. Now this deck is, okay, it is a deck that I brought over with me during my travels and it was already part of my collection. However, I'm not cheating in the sense that even if I had been at home and I had access to all of my decks, I would have still probably, you know, at least considered talking about this deck as my favorite deck that I've used so far in 2023. Now, the way in which I actually see this question is when you're, it's a favorite decks for usage, let's say. So it's a deck that might be you know, your favorite one, but you actually need to use it because as a collector and a tarot reader, in some cases can assure you that there are tarot decks that I'm actually really close to, but I don't necessarily use them. Some of them I never use them because they're just because they're collectible items and I really adore them. And they might have been my favorite ones for this year, but when I don't use them, I don't think that they actually qualify for this prompt in the VR. So this one is one of my favorite ones, but it's also a deck that I've been using quite a lot. And why? Because it's so versatile. It's a deck that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's also very conducive of a very deep dialogue, I feel. So whenever I use it, I feel like I'm immediately transported into some kind of a different parallel kind of universe in which, you know, you can leave everything that is distracting you behind and focus on the cards, on the message that they're trying to communicate to you. And it's definitely one of those decks that it is made to be used. It's not that it's not collectible. I absolutely think that is beautiful enough, gorgeous enough to be a collectible. And as a matter of fact, it also has this really beautiful holographic rainbow gilding on the edges. It's not that, it's just that it's one of those decks that, because it's a mass market edition, because it's a very affordable price, and because it's a very easy deck to read, or I don't want to use the word easy in a bad way. It's just, it's very versatile. So it's actually one of those decks that I would even recommend to a beginner reader, because in this case, you know, you can really get to know the essence of the cards, the meaning behind it, etc. So this is my answer to my favorite deck I've used so far in 2023, and it's the Rainbow Moon Tarot. The second prompt is a new deck that came into your collection this year. Now this is easy because all of the decks that I bought in both in Singapore and in Bangkok are all new to my collection. I may have rebought a tarot deck that I already had, but then I gave it away. But if I had to choose one that was something that I wanted everyone else to see, is the Oracle of Novice Witches. And these are the really gorgeous backs. Really beautiful, very I would say very creative kind of backs because of all of the symbology here, but also because it does refer back to this kind of witchy vibe that the deck has. Now this deck is it came to me as an idea. So I had the Barbara Walker tarot, which is very blunt. If you know that deck, it's very, very blunt. It's a beautiful deck though, but sometimes it feels like when it's delivered, the message is actually punching you in the face. And so in order for it to work, I felt like I needed to find an oracle deck that will help me kind of sweeten up the message a little bit. So this is what this oracle has been doing for me whenever I've been using that together with the Barbara Walker Tarot. Now this one is very special. Why? Because for each and every card we have a name of a famous witch, and also we have witches familiar, as you can tell. The booklet is very interesting because it actually does go quite deep into the elements or the symbology used by the deck. And then you've got, you know, what I find really interesting is that, of course, we all think of Merlin, for example, as a witch, in that case as a wizard, but if you don't know your history, or in some cases you may not have been aware that William Blake was also really interested into the occult, or Giordano Bruno, Prospero, Paracelsus, of course, for alchemy. But it's very interesting, Gandalf, of course. But it's very interesting because in our case, in my case, I always think that being interested in the occult is something very broad. It's a subject that is extremely interesting, but it's also really, really broad as a subject. And so you can actually be very much interested in the occult without necessarily even look at tarot decks. You may stop looking at different kind of disciplines. And so that doesn't mean that, you know, you don't belong with these people, because it's absolutely magical that you can actually, you know, you have something in common with Joan of Arc. And you know, and it's one in these cases, it's very interesting to read the guidebook because it does explain the relationship between the person that is depicted in the card and their interest into the occult. So this deck is not just interesting, it's not just one of those decks that is very useful to use when reading together with the guidebook, but it's also one of those oracle decks that I actually use together with a tarot deck in order to soften the blow, and in specific to soften the blow of the Barbara Walker Tarot. So this is the oracle of novice witches, and it's my answer to the question, a new deck that came into your collection this year. And the next prompt is most anticipated deck released this year, and it had to be the Citadel Oracle, published by Liminal 11 by Fez Incrite. These are the backs, really absolutely gorgeous back. I just adore this little deck. It's just absolutely fantastic. There has been so much anticipation about this deck in the tarot community, and the reason is very simple. First of all, because we know, you know, this deck was actually originally released in a smaller size, and it came as I think it was an add-on to a different special edition. It may have been the White Newman, I'm not entirely sure, or maybe something else. It's always published by Liminal 11. So some of us actually still have the hexagonal deck that came, and that was the very first release. And some of us, because of that, knew already about the power of this deck. I was not that lucky. I did not have that edition. And so when I saw that they were actually going to print it in a bigger size, and with this absolutely fantastic gold foil on the front, I got really excited. Now this is the mass market edition, and I would have loved to have also the limited edition, which comes with a book size. So it's a really big box shaped like a book, and it comes with the instructions to use this deck as a playing cards deck, or you know, for a cardboard game or something similar. And it does come with an additional deck that has exactly the same size and shape that you can actually you know, shuffle together and use together with this oracle. Now, it has been one of the most anticipated ones in the tarot community of 2023 because also of the very special kind of approach to divination and to introspection that this deck gives you. So as you will have noticed by now, there's each and every card has got an archetype. So it's naming an archetype, and what it does with that, it actually points to a very specific kind of energy. Going to the guidebook, it's incredibly interesting because no matter what your intuition may suggest about some of these archetypes, for example, the walker, the unknown journey, it's pretty straightforward, but I always recommend to go back to the guidebook and read the message about it, because there's always something that you might not know or you may not have been thinking about. So it's a very enriching kind of experience. I really love using this deck. I have actually started pairing it up with a tarot deck that I was very lucky to find at Asia Books in Siam, Paragon, and it's the Lost Code of Tarot by Andrea Aste, which is unfortunately it's long gone, it's long out of print, and it's very hard to find. So I was very lucky to find it there for a very reasonable price, and pairing these two up together is a very deep and meaningful experience. I highly recommend it, to the point that I've actually used this pairing as my dedication in specific to the city of Bangkok, because Bangkok to me represents a place that really touches my heart, because I feel like I know it so well. But don't take me wrong, of course I will never know it 100%, because it's impossible for a foreigner unless you're lucky enough to be able to live there. But to me, as a foreigner that I've been there 25 times, and then I always try time after time to integrate and to see what else is there, and try and contribute even to the wonderful part of the lively part, the livelihood itself of the city. So I dedicated this pairing to the city of Bangkok, and this is my answer to the prompt most anticipated deck released this year, and it's the Citadel Oracle. Okay, so this is the fourth prompt. This prompt is a bit difficult to talk about because it's the biggest disappointment. I have to be honest with you, I tried many times dealing with this deck. It's the Nightfall Tarot. It just doesn't work. The cards keep on sticking together. It's impossible to use it. And it's not the first time that I separate them. So every time I do this thing, and every time I do, they actually get chipped on the border, as you can tell. So this deck is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. I love using it. I love pairing it up with other oracle decks. It's see, and I promise you, I did this. See, I did this with each and every card 3 times already, and it doesn't matter. Every time I put it back, they just keep on gluing back together. And I just, I got to the point in which I got exhausted of doing this, because every time it's a heartbreaking process, because you never know how much damage you're going to inflict on the cards. And it's a really beautiful deck, but see that? So that is kind of a problem, in the sense that it's not something that you would expect to have to do time and again with a deck. I've had this problem before in many cases with decks that had this particular kind of gilding. This one here, which is beautiful, by the way. It's nice. It's one of those gilding that actually leaves a bit of like a sprinkle of spark on your hands as well, which could be fun. But if I have to do this over and over again because I can't even use it, there you go. I don't know whether it's related to the fact that it's 34 degrees Celsius and 95% humidity where I am, where I have been for the last couple of weeks. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why the cards, when I put them away, they keep on sticking back together. And maybe when I go back to Sydney, I'll have the possibility to do this with without any damaging. But what I'm thinking is, and it's something that I've talked about in a couple of videos already, what I'm thinking is I'm just gonna You know, I think the black borders are very wide anyway, so what I'm going to do is probably going to keep this kind of measurement instead of this is wider than this, so I'm going to measure this, and then I'm going to trim the sides of the cards and then round them back up again. Hopefully that will solve the problem, although that will solve the problem with the gilding on the sides, but not the top and the bottom. So I will have to think about something. Perhaps I will have to trim something off the top and the bottom as well. I will do a good job of it, don't worry. I have a professional trimmer. I don't have it obviously with me. And this deck, it's not a disappointment per se, because I really like it. It's a beautiful deck, really beautiful artwork. And I really love that it's in black and white. The fact that it's called the Nightfall. You know, all of those things going for it. But when I get to the point in which these cards, it's just heartbreaking every single time I have to separate them. So this is the reason why this is my answer to the prompt, the biggest disappointment. And I repeat, it's got absolutely nothing to do with the artwork. It's a production problem, and it might also be a weather related problem. So perhaps this will be very easy to solve, but I will have to find a way to solve this. So this is the Nightfall Tarot. But on a lighter note, let's have a look at this prompt. So this is the biggest surprise. I have to say, again, even in this case, even if I did have access to all of my collection on the new decks that came into my collection this year, I would definitely consider this deck for one of the top 3, let's say, biggest surprises that I've had. Why? Well, first of all, this is the Sims Tarot, so the Southeast Asian myths and legends, okay? So it's something that it's very, very interesting because it's a cooperation of different artists up until the tarot deck cards, and then we've got 3 oracle decks, all by the same authors. So these are called the Balgowlah Oracle cards by Rowan Ong, and they have been illustrated by Leonard Narciso. So as you can imagine, obviously these ones are cohesive because the artists are the same behind the concept and the execution of this deck, of the Oracle deck. But the real surprise is the tarot. So generally speaking, I think I've said that a couple of times before, I don't necessarily vibe with decks that have been produced by several different artists because of the way in which my brain processes information. I need to see continuity and cohesion. If I don't see that, I'm kind of slower in, let's say, in processing the information, in processing all the data, which is there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're giving a reading, unless you know the deck really well, that slows me down. And because of that, I have actually decided not to buy a deck that was indeed produced by various different artists. When I saw this one, I got it because, first of all, I knew that it was out of print. I know that it's a hard to find deck. I know that it's very beautiful. I had seen a few walkthroughs of this deck, and I also knew about the Oracle decks that were sold together, you know, in the same deck. And I kind of thought to myself, okay, well, there's a lot that, you know, actually ticks all the boxes for me. So that could be one of the ways in which I can approach a deck that has been made by different artists. Let's see how it goes. And so when I got it, that was an absolute surprise, and it was a really good surprise. So a surprise in the sense that I was ecstatic. I was really happy to look at the cards. The cohesion for me comes from the myths and legends that are represented in these cards, and indeed sometimes I still feel like I would have probably preferred a more cohesive kind of artwork, but it doesn't really matter. And when I started pairing it with the Thai produced Kuan Yin Oracle, I really thought that, you know, those two are a match made in heaven. So this is definitely an even bigger surprise than when I thought that when I saw it the first time. So this is definitely my answer to the prompt. What was your biggest surprise? The Sims Tarot. And the next prompt is really funny because it's a deck crush. I have to say, I've acquired this. This is the Mantra Oracle. It's a very recent publication, so I don't know if many of you have it, but I really highly recommend it. Whether you're into these kind of, you know, meditation kind of decks or not, it's regardless of that, I think that this deck has got so much going for it that it will be a very good very good deck in your collection. It will help you reach levels of meditation, but also, you know, of enjoyment, because it's also a really versatile deck. But what I really specifically refer to it as a crush is that I really cannot stop looking at the association between the artwork and the mantra and the keyword at the bottom, or the message at the bottom of the cards, which is in many cases an actual translation of the mantra that we see. This is an absolutely gorgeous deck. I mean, everything about it is absolutely fantastic. I love the very specific kind of artwork, the way in which, for example, a depth of field is achieved through this kind of artistic style in which they use slight dots, and it's like a pixelation kind of work in the sense that it gives you the furthest away you go from the first focus, then the more pixelation you have. I don't know if I explained that the correct way, because I'm not an expert. If you talk to me about photography, I can actually explain that a lot better, but I hope that it was quite clear. But this deck is actually really beautiful, even when you use it together with a tarot deck. But I think that at its best is actually used on its own. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've actually started pulling one card each and every morning and one card each and every night before going to bed. And the card in the morning seems to be an energetic kind of card, and the card at night seems to be the opposite. So I'm very impressed by how well this deck has adapted to me, or perhaps it's the opposite. Perhaps it's how well I've actually adapted to this deck. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's one of those decks that have you ever had one of those decks that it really speaks to you because of who you are, because of what you're going through right at that moment when you're using it, and because of what you want to become. This is that kind of deck to me, and that's why it had to be my answer to the prompt, your deck crush. And the next prompt is the deck that made you cry. Now, this is the Sacred Nature Oracle, and the reason why I'm using this as a prompt, as an answer to this prompt, let me just zoom out, is because of the combination between the artwork, which is related to photography. So obviously it's got that particular kind of interest for me. But it's a very special kind of art style and photography. There is obviously some manipulation to it. The colors have been tweaked, and it's got that kind of sepia tones that I really, really like, but it also makes all the photos look like they've been antiquated. So it looks like they're old kind of photos, which obviously they're not. And I really love the association with the human spirit that is expressed sometimes by the use of a pose, by the use of, for example, sometimes the figures look directly into the camera, they break the fourth wall, but their eyes are closed. Or in other cases, they just look away and their eyes are still closed and they're covered with flowers. Sometimes they're looking far away into the distance. There is a lot of symbology that you can actually feel coming out of the artwork in these cards. And when it comes to some of the cards, in specific this one for example, I absolutely love the association between the image and the card and the keywords, which is creativity. And the fact there is also association with the botanical element, in this case expressed by the flower, which is the white water lily. Ironically, I'm seeing a lot of these in northern Thailand these days. I really think, well, this deck really made me emotional when I was using it, when I was going through it, when I looked at the images. It's one of those decks, again, like the Mantra Oracle. I really think that you can use it when you pair it up with a tarot deck, but it's also really good when you use it on its own, because it's got that kind of powerful message for you to listen to really tune into. And you know, and you can use it as a 1-card pull, but you can use it in different spreads or in a 3-card pull. I just absolutely adore all of these cards. Every single one of them is very touching. It's very deeply moving, and that's the reason why this is my answer to the prompt, deck that made you cry, the Sacred Nature Oracle. And the next prompt is a deck that made you happy, and I really had to go with this one. This is the Curious Cat Club. Now, the reason why I chose this deck is, first of all, because I had my eye on it for quite some time, and when I saw it, I didn't really know that it could have been used as an oracle deck as well as a playing card deck. But when I saw it, it was at a time in which I was already on holiday. I had been away from home for about a week, 10 days or something like that. And I was already missing my cats, and there had been a change of, you know, guard, in the sense that my niece had just left. She was pet sitting for me, and someone else had been coming in and taking over. And I was kind of, you know, when you're you're kind of worried, because we didn't know this person. We obviously hoped that it was gonna be a good person for the cats and treat them well. And I know that everything that I'm saying right now, if you don't have animals, you will not understand it. So it's just something that it is very typical of someone who's really affectionate to. The animals in my life have always been very important, in the sense that I grew up with dogs. My mom used to have 3 dogs, one Bernese mountain dog, then we had a Maremma, which is a very big dog, and lastly we also had a golden retriever. So I'm used to medium to big size dogs, and I never had cats. But when I met my husband, you know, he grew up with cats, so it was quite the opposite from me, and we just had to decide, no, we really wanted a pet, and we decided that because we travel so much, it was going to be painful for a dog. It's painful for a cat as well, but a cat, when you make sure that they stay in the same environment, they stay where they used to be, and there's someone that they know, they've seen before, that, you know, starts feeding them and starts building up a routine with them, and we check in on them regularly, then it's a lot easier perhaps than having a dog and being away all the time. But it's always a bit heartbreaking, because you know, they do bring you a lot of affection, and you do get attached. And my cats are 14 years old, so obviously, you know, we rescued them from the street together. They grew up together, and with us, we grew up with them. So when I saw this deck, I was very happy that I could get it, because it's a beautiful deck. It's really cute, and it actually is a really good oracle reader, believe it or not. It comes with a little guidebook that tells you how to interpret the cards, but most of the time you will see that the cards actually correspond to the meanings of the minors of the corresponding suits. And it's just really cute. I mean, look at this joker. So this deck is my answer to the prompt, decks that make you happy. So the next prompt is the most beautiful deck this year, and I had to go with the Gatsby Oracle. Now this oracle, unfortunately, I finally did some research, and I actually found out that this oracle for now is out of print. However, there is an account on Instagram that I was following, which is based in Bangkok, and they actually deal with the usual decks you will find on Tevada. And I need to check whether they're 100% genuine, so 100% authentic, because I don't want to put a link to their store and only to find out that they're actually selling counterfeit decks. I will never do that, at least not on purpose. So once I'll actually verify 100% that the store actually sells genuine decks, I will make sure to put the link in the description box below, because I think that there's going to be a reprint in the second part of the year, or at least that's what they were saying, that there's going to be a reprint of a few of the usual Tevada decks, like the Wild Child Tarot, the Wild Child Oracle, and another couple of decks, and perhaps the Gatsby Oracle is going to be reprinted as well. Now this one has to be the most beautiful deck I have got, because honestly I just love everything about it. The the lifestyle that was so popular back in the 20s, there is that kind of beautiful decadence. That's how I like to call it. It's a beautiful decadence in the sense that we all know how the 20s ended up. You know, it was not a good way to wrap up a decade for sure. But on the other hand, we also had fantastic production when it comes to literature, when it comes to any kind of artistic production, and also when it comes to movies. For example, we had the most glamorous stars that the history of cinema has ever seen were from the 20s. So your Buster Keaton, you know, and then we started with a little bit later on with Charlie Chaplin, and all of the divas of the 20s that were just absolutely gorgeous. And I do believe that this deck kind of represents that decadence, as I said before, together with that beauty that was still very refined and very sought after. And it needed to look as if it was just achieved without effort. You know, something like this obviously has got a lot of effort put in it, because you know it's a very complex, a very complicated kind of dress, but everything looked light and easy and simple, and almost as if, you know, you just throw it in. You just throw your dress on and you're ready to go out and have fun and sip on a cocktail and smoke one of those really long cigarettes, and you know, there you go, and have someone kiss your hands, because that's what they used to do, the high society of that decade. And I love the fact that there is a card which is representing Venice. So as I said, this is a really beautiful deck. It's also a beautiful deck in the sense that it works really well with a few tarot decks that I've got. I really do appreciate the keywords and the it's a short message that you have at the bottom of the cards as well. And the product value is amazing. I did not overpay for this deck. It was actually very let's say affordable. I cannot say the same for when you actually buy the product online, because you will have to pay for shipping, you have to pay for import taxes and all that. But this is still available in Kinokuniya, Bangkok, in the Siam Paragon branch. So if you're there, if you have the possibility to go there, I highly recommend, and you want this deck, I highly recommend going there and even getting a discount card if you want, because there's so many decks that, you know, I wanted to buy all of them, and obviously I couldn't, because you have to stop sooner or later. You just have to find your limit and you have to rein it in, let's say. But this is my response to the prompt most beautiful deck this year, and it's the Gatsby Oracle. And the last prompt, I don't have this deck obviously, but I'm going to show you a couple of images from the Instagram account. So this is the prompt is what deck do you want by the end of the year? So it's called Habitat Tarot. I hope I pronounce it right. Apologies if I don't. I have been following the Instagram account of the creator for a long time, and that was amazing, because I've seen the process of creation of this tarot deck. You know, whenever the creator was just posting something on Instagram, I had the possibility to literally see this deck grow, just mature into something. And then when they launched the Kickstarter campaign, I think it was, perhaps a couple of months ago, I think I was one of the very first backers, because I had been waiting for this deck for such a long time. And the creator is actually now working on another project as well. I think it's called the Tamara Tarot, and it reminds me so much of those images by the paintress Tamara Lempicka. and it really does have that kind of vibe and that kind of energy and the art style, and I can't wait to see what becomes of that project. But for the time being, definitely the deck that I still want by the end of the year is the Habitrap Tarot. Now that was the last one for today. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. It was a really fun tag, and I'm looking forward to watch other channels pick up on this VR to Spirited Stardust 11, because it's always interesting to see what others think, what other tarot readers and tarot collectors think about the decks you have. And you know, that's what makes it diverse, and that's what it's actually helping the tarot community to grow in a safe but also interesting and manner, and it helps you grow yourself as a tarot reader. So I'm always appreciative of the comments you put in my videos, because I'm always confronting myself with what you think, and that makes me even less let's say scared or anxious about sharing my choices, because as you can imagine, sometimes you know, we are bearing our soul to, you know, whomever is watching this video, and it's really sharing a lot about ourselves, and it needs to be in a safe environment. But I'm happy to say that it is becoming more and more rewarding, thanks to you, because it's a fantastic report that I was able to establish with my subscribers. So I really hope that you like this video. If you did, just don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. So that's it for today. More to come. Have a great day.